Alright, it's been quite a while since I've done a YouTube video, and got a little project detective special here. Thought I would use this to make one for you guys. Basically, it's a nice little detective special made in 1972, and it looks like it was dropped. There's a little bit of a dent right on the very edge of the barrel right there. Let's see if we can get that to focus. Yep, you can see that little dent right there. And then it looks like the hammer broke. And I have no idea what somebody did to that poor hammer. But we're going to see if we can't fix that up a little bit. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to make sure that we don't have any ammunition anywhere on the table while we're doing our work. The gun is unloaded, and we're going to go ahead and strip this thing down. We're going to start by pulling the stocks off. And it looks like somebody dipped these factory stocks in I don't know, some kind of varnish or something. It's even got drips where it's running off the bottom. So might have a future video with that showing how we can bring those back to looking more like original, because they weren't this shiny. You know, it's basically filled in a lot of the checkering too. So we'll see if we can't get those fixed up in a future video. Alright, next thing we're going to turn it over, and we're going to take this screw out. And there's a spring and a detent, and that's going to hold our crane assembly, crane and cylinder assembly in. Just got to be very careful, make sure you use gunsmithing screwdrivers, hollow ground screwdrivers for this. Because as expensive as these are, you don't want to scratch your gun any more than you have to. And there's our little spring-loaded detent, and that holds our crane assembly in. Let's go ahead and take that out. And there we go. There's our cylinder assembly with the crane attached. Don't recommend that you take this apart any further than this, but you can always clean and lube it up real nice. This one looks like it's in pretty good shape, spins freely. This may even have an excess of lube in there, but seems to be working pretty good, so we're going to leave that alone. Next thing, we're going to take the side plate off, and here's where a lot of people get into trouble, because once they get the screws out, the plate doesn't come off. They end up prying on it. And you definitely do not want to do that. I'll show you what the recommended procedure is for that. Basically, you want to use some vibrations from your screwdriver handle to get it off. Okay, so the side plate, you know, doesn't want to move. Basically, you want to take your screwdriver and wrap it like this. And it usually takes a few times. That one seemed to come loose pretty good. You can see how that side plate came loose. Yeah, let's give it another one. And our cylinder release came out. And there's our side plate. You'll notice in here is another spring-loaded detent. And that is what your cylinder release pushes against. Okay, set that aside. Now we have the inner workings. Okay, you can kind of see how this functions. Single action, double action. band is starting to come out of there. There we go. Alright, so the next thing we're going to want to do, we want to pull this V-spring out, and we're going to want to pinch that with some pliers and get it off these little pins right here so that we can remove it. And I didn't grab one, so bear with me while I grab the correct pair of pliers. Alright, so we just have some little pliers that I got a long time ago out of a little wire forming jewelry set, and they don't have any knurling at all on the inside, so I like to use them for this so that you don't put any excess nicks on these springs where it would cause fatigue. If you use it with a regular pair of pliers and you end up getting a little mark, actually there's some marks on this one, so we'll go ahead and dress this up when we're going back together with it in the second part. And that's just little places where fatigue cracks can start. You know, little marks like right there where you can catch it with your fingernail. So I like to dress all those up before I put it back together. Okay. Next thing, we're going to want to get the hand out. This is the part that actually engages the ratchet on the back of the cylinder and makes it rotate. And it drops down and grabs the next one, makes it rotate. It's also part of what makes a Colt revolver really lock up really nice, because you've got the hand pushing on the ratchet in one direction, and you've got the cylinder being held by the lock right there, and they basically work against each other and keep the cylinder locked up really tight. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get this pin out. Okay, got it started, and we'll take our special pliers here and pull it the rest of the way out. Get that out of the way. And there's our troublemaker hammer. Everything looks really nice inside of here. A little drier than I would like to see, so I'm going to put a little lube on there when I go back together. And go ahead and finish this off by pulling the rest of these parts out. Okay, what this part does is basically goes up and blocks the hammer from dropping all the way down so that the firing pin can't touch a primer until the trigger's pulled. You notice that it was connected by this little bell crank right here, and that pulls it down out of the way when you pull the trigger. And unless you're pulling the trigger, that's going to be in the way and keeping the firing pin from touching the primer. Alright. So everything looks really good inside this gun. I'm happy with the way it turned out. It's the first time I've had it apart. I'm not going to take the cylinder lock out. I'm just going to basically put a little lube on there and make sure that this screw is tight. And that's as far as I'm going to go with that. So we'll go ahead and set that aside. And the next thing we're going to be working on is reshaping this hammer So it's a little more, so it looks a little more like a factory bobbed hammer, but they went a little too far. Right there, you can see they got into the cavity where the firing pin is, so that's always going to show a little bit. The other option I have is I have a spare hammer. I could put a full hammer back in this gun, but since this one's mostly going to be used for a carry weapon, I'm going to go ahead and do the bob on it right, and we'll get it back together, and I'll show you how it looks when we're done. Thank you.